I'd like to think that Ariel still kept a secret fork just for combing her hair. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about Disney's 1989 animated musical fantasy, The Little Mermaid. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. The Little Mermaid stars the vocal talents of Jodi Benson, Christopher Daniel Barnes, and Pat Carroll, and was directed by the duo of John Musker and Ron Clements. Based on the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale of the same name, it tells the story of teenage mermaid, Ariel, who dreams of becoming human. Although The Little Mermaid was the 28th Disney animated feature film, it was situated in a very interesting position, somehow being something very new, while also being very much a throwback. For nearly 2 decades prior to The Little Mermaid's release, Disney animation was in a bit of a slump. That Disney period is officially termed the Bronze Age era, but it's often referred to as the Dark Era because of how many box office and critical failures were released during that time period. But it wasn't just the box office performances that had changed during this time. The stories and type of films had changed too. The Little Mermaid marked Disney's first animated fairy tale in 30 years, preceded by 1959's Sleeping Beauty. That stylistic shift, combined with its critical and box office success, gave The Little Mermaid the honor of being another first. The first film of what would become Disney's highly regarded Renaissance era. There were a number of factors that contributed to the success of the Renaissance era films, but one of the biggest was the music, and the return to a musical structure for the films. There had been some Bronze Age films with songs in them, but The Little Mermaid brought a Broadway-esque performative style to its structure, which, combined with the fairy tale storyline, created something very fantastical. Although I personally prefer the songs that would come from the later Renaissance-era movies, there's no denying that much of the music from this film is extremely memorable. It was also pretty innovative, introducing a slightly more modern sound to the classic Disney musical tradition. There were still some small expository songs, and Ursula's incredibly theatrical villain song, and of course the main character's obligatory but earnest dream song. But songs like Under the Sea and Kiss the Girl brought in a much poppier sound than had been typical of past films, and even introduced hints of other genres like reggae and calypso. So while the music is something I've always enjoyed about this movie, and still enjoy about it, the same cannot be said about the story itself. Although Ariel's independence and perceived disobedience were an update, the rest of this fairy tale story had a very classic Disney feel to it, in large part because of the source material. Now, to be fair, traditional princess stories have never been my thing, but this film has some more significant story issues, even beyond my personal preferences. Probably the biggest is how rushed the story feels, even by Disney standards. There are some almost funny moments of exceptional rushing, like the sudden onset of the hurricane, but it's not just story beats, it's also character development too, none more obvious than with King Triton. The thematic takeaways of the story are also a little suspect. I'm sure it wasn't the intended message by Disney animators, but the idea of a female character having to give up not only the most fundamental quality of herself, but also literally her voice to be with the prince she likes? That seemed weird and just off to me, even when I was a little kid. As I mentioned before, I wasn't much of a Disney princess kid, so even though I thought Ariel and Prince Eric were fine, they were, perhaps ironically, never my focus as a kid. I appreciate them more now. Ariel's a little frustrating with her impulsiveness and infatuation, but she's only 16 years old, so it's not a huge stretch in terms of reasonable characterization. And despite the story's problematic themes, Prince Eric as a character really isn't that bad. He's a handsome, humble guy who loves his dog and never has anything bad to say about mermaids, despite the story's implication that he would never marry one. So if I wasn't focusing on Ariel and Eric as a kid, who was I focusing on? The animals, specifically Flounder and Sebastian. Flounder used to be my favorite character from this movie, and I even had a little bath toy of him. So rewatching this for the first time in nearly a decade, I was surprised by just how little Flounder's even in it. Sebastian, on the other claw, is everywhere, providing us with humor, music, and arguably the most complete character arc of the story. But what about the villain? Don't worry, I'm getting to her. Ursula, the octopus-inspired sea witch, is one of the best and most memorable aspects of this film. As with just about everything else in this movie, she's never been one of my top favorite Disney villains, but she works so well here in the context of the story. Her design and personality are both very big and theatrical, and she's among Disney's most sinister, scary villains. But she doesn't go about her villainy through brute force, usually. Instead, she's very manipulative, tricking the naive and impulsive Ariel into their deal. Although Ursula's got a lot in common with some of the fairy tale villains of old, she was a clear template and inspiration for many of the Renaissance-era villains to come, including Scar from The Lion King and Hades from Hercules. That transitionary blend of new and old was everywhere in The Little Mermaid. The villain, the story, the music, the style, even the art, with its blend of CG imagery and cel-shaded artwork drawn from live-action models, just like they used to do early on in Disney's history. Although it's never been a top-tier Disney movie for me, The Little Mermaid was an important and influential step from old Disney into the Renaissance era. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number one is the music. Music is one of the big draws for nearly all of the films of Disney's Renaissance era, and The Little Mermaid is no exception. As the first film of the new era, it had to bridge the gap between old and new, and while many of the Bronze Age films had music, it wasn't until The Little Mermaid that the fairy tale animated musical made its return. The incorporation of songs had a lot in common with some of those earlier Silver Age films, but the style was different, much more inspired by musical theater and pop music. Ursula's Poor Unfortunate Souls is a big dramatic number, while Ariel's Dream Song, Part of Your World, is a dynamic and personal feeling song. But the modern edge comes into play with the poppier Sebastian-led songs like Under the Sea and Kiss the Girl. Neither of those sounded like any Disney song that had come before, incorporating not only pop, but also calypso and even reggae into the mix, giving the film a very unique sound for an animated musical. The second pro is Ursula. The villainous sea witch may not make my personal top Disney villains list, but she's a very strong component of this film. She has the grandiose evilness of past fairy tale villains, but her theatricality and the manner of her deception and manipulation brought with it a revised and updated feel, something that would pop up in villains throughout the Renaissance era. Her octopus design, eel sidekicks, Flotsam and Jetsam, and magical powers made her equal parts creepy and formidable, and she's among the breed of Disney villain with no shred of good in her. She's just pure sinister evil. On the con side, the biggest issue is how rushed the story is. Now, I know that we're talking about a Disney animated film here. They're not typically known for being the longest or most comprehensive stories. In fact, its brisk 83-minute runtime isn't that far off from most of the other films in the Renaissance era. But while those other stories feel like they take you on a complete adventure, this one feels like it was sped through on fast forward. Big story beats happen suddenly and in quick succession without much or any indication of time passing. Character growth happens out of the blue, as if you missed 20 or 30 minutes of build-up to get them to that point. Even the climax and ending feel sudden. It's not an issue that's exclusive to The Little Mermaid, but it is one that's especially noticeable within this film. My second con is another story-based issue, and is the thematic takeaway, or overarching message of the film. At its core, this is a coming-of-age story. It's about a teenage mermaid who's curious and adventurous and is drawn to the unknown world rather than what she already knows. Now, obviously, I've got no problem with that. I don't even take issue with Ariel's continued desire to be part of the human world by the end. It was her dream before she ever even met Eric, after all. The problem comes in the form of what I can only hope were unintentional takeaways. To be part of this world and to be with Eric, Ariel has to give up nearly everything that makes her, her. her friends, her family, her fins, even her voice at one point, all just to get the guy. Now, obviously, this is based on an existing fairy tale, and to the film's credit, Eric never comes out and tells her he won't be with her because she's a mermaid, but she still changes these inherent qualities about herself for him. It seemed weird to me even as a kid, but now it really stands out as an eyebrow-raising message from a Renaissance-era film. Before I give you my rating recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying The Little Mermaid, or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy as you go in my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give The Little Mermaid 3 out of 5 paws. It's an enjoyable enough start to Disney's Renaissance era, with some memorable music and a sinister villain, but the questionable thematic takeaways and extremely rushed story caused this film to flounder some. I would recommend The Little Mermaid to fans of Disney's Silver Age fairy tales. The fantastical princess true love's kiss storyline of The Little Mermaid is very similar to many of those earlier films, though the slightly more modern take on the animation, and especially the music, will also appeal to fans of some of the other early Renaissance-era films. People who enjoy Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale will probably also appreciate the story here, but just be aware that there are many significant changes to the plot. If you liked The Little Mermaid, I would recommend Cinderella. As one of Disney's Silver Age fairy tale musicals, there are inherently a lot of story similarities regarding true love's kiss and love at first sight. But this film also features a girl who magically transforms to hide her true self, as well as a prince who's obsessed with finding her based on a single clue, a glass slipper in this case rather than a good singing voice. If you're looking for another Disney Renaissance-era film, you should check out Hercules. Once again, directed by the duo of Musker and Clements, this is another love story in which a deal is struck with a theatrical and memorable villain. And if you just want another mermaid movie, you might want to watch Splash. Released by Disney under the Touchstone Pictures banner, it's a live-action romantic comedy about a mermaid who comes to New York City and encounters Tom Hanks. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen The Little Mermaid? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite movie about a mermaid or merman? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insider information on this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainely Movies, the way life should be.